Perfect. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon now, depending on where you are. But I want to thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Melanie Harris, and I'm the Director for Network Operations and Design at Complete College America. I've had the privilege of working closely with Lily and her team at the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative to bring you all the Student Basic Needs webinar series. I wanted to start off with some quick Zoom logistics. So first, please mind your mute. This is a meeting, so you are able to unmute, but we will have a presentation and time for Q&A a little later in today's session. The meeting is being recorded, so you'll have access to the recording after today's session, along with any resources that we mentioned or that are shared in the chat. We love the chat box, so please engage there, send your questions, comments. If you have resources or great work that you're doing on your campuses, feel free to drop the links there. And last but not least, closed captioning is available and can be turned on at the bottom of your screen. It is provided through an automated service, so please excuse any errors or typos that you see there. So I am honored to turn it over to Lily to just open us up for today.
Thank you, Melanie. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all. I feel like we have, spent some quality time together during this webinar series, and it's just been great that folks keep coming back. So today's topic, which was one of the top topics voted on at one of our initial meetings in December, is around how campuses can best leverage community resources to support their students. And I'm so excited for the discussion today. I did want to give you just a quick overview of the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative as we get started, because we want to make sure that whatever work we're doing is meeting the needs and the top interest areas of our campus partners. So I will just share here. So our mission is to help build the capacity of our campus partners to accelerate progress on student success. And we do that through professional development and other opportunities to engage with you and get to know you and your issues. A collaborative is exactly kind of what it sounds like. We really believe that we can do more together than any of us can do individually. And that is through, sharing our ideas, sharing our challenges, offering support and resources to one another across the state, because what's happening in Eastern Kentucky can be helpful in Central Kentucky and Western Kentucky, et cetera. And then these are just kind of the core pieces of our work. Based on campus interest and campus needs, we are setting up and standing up different communities of practice. We have one currently active around student basic needs, and we are really planting a flag on this topic. It is not going away. And so as we move through our first kind of continuous improvement cycle in this round of webinar series with some professional development, we're going to be looking at what do we do next? What's the next level of work around supporting student basic needs in Kentucky? We're also excited to have launched the Impact Exchange in January. It's an online hub and platform for folks to share questions, share resources, engage with one another. As the collaborative, we're really trying to get this, like the soft launch is around our student basic needs community. And we hope that you will visit the Impact Exchange. I know Phyllis is going to put a link to it in the chat so that you can see the toolkits and resources that are already posted, and then look for other things that you might need and just throw it out there to our community. Because who is the collaborative? You are the collaborative. And so, we want to really be able to leverage the knowledge across our state and across all of the expertise that you bring to this work as well. When we see an opportunity for professional development, we're going to try to provide that to you through some expert national speakers, national perspective, but also highlight some great things happening in Kentucky with our partners. We're engaged right now in 2 different technical assistance programs and opportunities, one focused on guided pathways and one focused on Purpose First with Complete College America. So we're excited to get to do that deeper work, ongoing work with our campus partners. We're looking for opportunities for technical assistance around student basic needs as well. And so that's where just continued engagement with our campus partners and you all sharing what's on your plates, what's coming next, and what you really could use some additional support with will help us identify resources to bring to the table. And then as we're moving through any of these opportunities, we really want to strengthen our campus partners to drive change on your campus. And so that's where we're embedding and baking in concepts around change leadership, as well as the tools and techniques of change management to help our campuses be most successful. So that's all I was going to share at this point, and we will, I'll circle back around kind of at the end with what's coming next. Turn it back to Melanie.
Thank you. So it is my honor to introduce our presenters for today. They will be sharing about leveraging community, state, and federal organizations and social services to support student basic needs support. So please help me do a virtual round of applause for our presenters today. Ruben Canedo is the co-chair of the University of California System-Wide Basic Needs Committee, and Kyoko Thomas is the Basic Needs Center Director at UC Berkeley. So thank you both for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank y'all so much for the invitation, and just even in the intro, finding out of all the great work that's going on. I love that. I love when folks are being intentional about learning, not just in their local context, but in other communities, so we can actively learn with each other and move with each other. I'm Ruben. I use he, they pronouns. Kyoko's here with me. I'm really just the Will Smith to Kyoko. That, like, when we're on the red carpet, I just put all the attention on her because she's really the shero of all of our community members. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to be Kyoko's clicker, and then she'll pass me the vibes over, and then I'll take us to it. The goal for today, y'all, was to put something together that was gonna be helpful for folks that might be in the beginning stages of doing this work, all across like the very advanced stage. We wanted to show you all what's our strategy and how is it playing out in a local context like a campus. So UC Berkeley is going to be the case study, and that's where Kyoko is our director of the Basic Needs Center. And then I'm going to take you all to, like, what does it mean to then organize and amplify what's happening at a campus level, at a state level, and the case study there will be California. And because this is a national setting, y'all, I just want to be very transparent with y'all. One of the things that happens to me when I travel across the country is that I come in, and as soon as people hear Berkeley or Bay Area or California, they're like, I don't know how helpful this is going to be because y'all are rich, y'all got that tech money, and you've never had to struggle because you have so much money that you don't know what to do with it. And that's kind of true. California does have some resources, but this was a grassroots effort that started with $0 and zero infrastructure. And today you're going to learn about how we brought it all together and how it's gotten to this place. And we're excited for your questions. So please bring in your questions so that we make sure that we're tracking those as we're moving to the conversation. Without further ado, shout out to one of my favorite human beings in the world, Kyoko. I'm gonna share my screen, and then when you say click, I click.
Thank you so much, Ruben. But good afternoon, everyone. As Ruben said, I'm Kyoko Thomas, and I'm the director of the Basic Needs Center at UC Berkeley, and still getting used to this time change. So I know it is a little bit afternoon for you all, but I'm still on that morning schedule. So very excited to be here today. As Ruben said, I think the hope really is that there are some pearls of wisdom within these lessons learned over the journey, and really thinking about the work that we've been doing at the campus level. Ruben, next slide. That is our lovely faces. Next slide.
This is how you know it's allergy season, because my mouth is open and Kyoko's nose is like flared. We're trying to breathe out here.
That's real. But really today, I just kind of wanted to ground us in terms of some of the conversation and really this idea of thinking about food security beyond the food pantry. As Ruben said, these efforts at the UC Berkeley campus really started on the ground with students really demanding that their basic needs be met. And so in 2014, students really organized to create the first food pantry on UC Berkeley campus. And what's interesting in this timeline and context is at that time, the campus community and leadership actually did not want there to be a food pantry physically on campus. So our first location was actually across the street. And since then, we now have our location that is in our student union. But that, I think, is really telling in terms of these efforts, that it really took a community of supports, but also student leaders to really lift these important issues. Next slide. So just a high level snapshot. This is your vision test for the day. But really, this is the data that really guides the work. That's really important for us to really think about the food insecurity of our UC Berkeley student community, both our undergraduate and graduate student population, but also really understanding that our basic needs experiences of our students are intersectional. So this is really important in terms of how we guide our outreach strategy in terms of understanding which students are disproportionately impacted by, in this case, food insecurity, and to think about how we really need to target our services and really engage not only the staff and faculty working with these students, but obviously our students directly. Next slide. So one of the things that I'm sure you all know in this space, and again, it's really wonderful to hear about these professional development opportunities and just a little bit about the work that you're all doing collectively to really lift basic needs and move this conversation in the direction that it needs to go in. But for us, it's really important when we have these conversations in any space to really think about what this actually looks like in terms of the student experience. So we know, there's this narrative we're really trying to push and move away from, which is that narrative of the starving college student who eats top ramen, right? May skip meals here and there, but that becomes completely normalized. And for us, it's so much more complex than that. We know that students who have struggles with their basic needs have a dramatic impact in terms of their overall student experience, as well as their overall completion. So students' academic performance is impacted in terms of lower GPA, as well as persistence and graduation rates. Next slide. So as I had mentioned, we really started off with creating our food pantry as one of the first basic needs programs on the UC Berkeley campus, but one in which, has really evolved to have a significant amount of student and now staff who utilize this resource. But for us, this is a critical part of the conversation. As you can see, this is a quick snapshot of food pantry usage data from last academic year. I will say this is interesting because our campus, I'm sure like many of yours, had remote instruction. So this actually, in so many ways, really does not reflect the true usage of how many students and staff at the UC Berkeley community use our pantry. So in the conversation of really thinking about our pantry being an emergency resource, it's been an important part of the conversation and our strategy to think about what are the long-term sustainable interventions to address the food security needs of our community. So we knew that the pantry, while it's always going to be necessary to meet our students' immediate needs, that we had to think about the strategy beyond, our emergency food provision. And this is really where, over the past few years, we have this community of collaboration in terms of working with on and off campus partners to really think about a systemic and strategic approach to food security at UC Berkeley. Next slide. So I'm sure that all of you know SNAP, which in California is referred to as CalFresh, has been a program that we've really seen as one of the most effective interventions to address food security of our student community. So, what I'm excited to share today is some of the lessons learned in the partnerships that we've developed. But over the years, we've really been trying to understand how we can ensure that there's a direct pipeline of eligible students who get connected to this much needed resource. It's one of those situations where we hear students share all the time with us that having CalFresh benefits was one of the most important parts of their financial experiences while in college. That despite the financial aid package, whether they have loans, or gift aid, that while that's incredibly important, that often it didn't really cover their true cost in terms of their expenses for food. And, in our Bay Area, I'm sure, as you know, too, the cost of rent is really through the roof. And so for us, really thinking about how can we ensure that this partnership, that we could really leverage that to be able to support our students on a more strategic level. Next slide. So this is the exciting part of the work, is that we at the Basic Needs Center really kind of are the hub in terms of thinking about the direct connection to students to a variety of basic needs, resources, and services. However, this has been really important to really highlight the amount of work support and collaboration from this entire community to address this large scale issue. So at our center, we have a series of student ambassadors or student staff who really support in terms of our CalFresh efforts. So their work really is about providing CalFresh campaigns in terms of destigmatizing CalFresh for college students, hosting a series of events to really get students to apply for CalFresh, as well as just to support students one-on-one with any sort of application assistance or support. On our campus too, the other key partner, there are key partners in actually everything that we do, but our financial aid and scholarships office have been really, really integral in terms of this partnership. So one of the things that we do every single fall semester is that we receive a roster of students who are potentially eligible to apply for CalFresh. And so again, these are students who meet particular financial aid criteria to meet the income threshold for CalFresh eligibility. So financial aid works with us to be able to identify who are the students that we believe who are eligible that we can do mass outreach to. We also work with our local community food bank. So in Alameda, that's Alameda County Community Food Bank. They are the ones who have the largest contract with the county social services team to do CalFresh outreach. So they've been really the experts who have really helped us over the past few years really understand the landscape of CalFresh eligibility, the application process, and so have been really important partners in terms of providing us the technical support needed to do this type of work and really be able to scale to meet the amount of students in need and who are eligible for CalFresh. Lastly, we work with our county social services team, and this has really evolved in particular over the last 2 years. But we've worked to have eligibility workers on site, on campus, to actually meet with students so that students didn't get lost in the application process from the point of submitting an application to actually doing the CalFresh interview. We also have a liaison at Alameda County Social Services who's really helped work with us in terms of troubleshooting college student eligibility. So I'm sure it's no surprise, but not all eligibility workers understand all of the nuances and the rules about college student eligibility. And so we've learned a lot over the last few years, but this has been really important in terms of ensuring that while students can apply for CalFresh, that they're actually receiving the much needed benefit. Next slide. So I know I shared a little bit about this, but we do have a strategy in terms of thinking about actually identifying the students in our community who are eligible for CalFresh so we can actually support them in applying. UC Berkeley campus is very large, so we have over 44,000 students and over 10% of that student community is eligible to apply for CalFresh. So we have a pretty big task at hand in terms of connecting with individual students. For us on a very kind of ground level, all of our CalFresh team is available at the food pantry. So while our visitors come to be able to get their much needed food resources, we have a team who's there to answer questions, but also to sign students up for either the large group application sessions or individual sessions. As I mentioned, financial aid really has been crucial ever since we've been able to receive a roster of these students who are eligible. We've seen the number of students applying for CalFresh increase dramatically, but every semester financial aid works with us to craft a particular message to send to every student. And then lastly, the food bank has really supported us with a text message campaign. So a lot of our students don't read their emails. I could say that I'm guilty of that. And so we know, especially with the age range of students that we're working with, text messages can be really effective. So one of the benefits of the food bank is that they have the infrastructure to do text message campaigns. And so that's something that we've done over the last 2 years as well. Next slide. So this, in terms of the way that we think about engaging students to apply, we've tried to meet students where they're at and to really leverage some of these larger orientations and events that are happening often at the beginning of the academic year. But we have super clinics. It's so funny, I think about these names now, and it just kind of makes me laugh in terms of how this is perceived by our student community. But we have super clinics where we have large application events where students can come, and not only are they there to submit their application, but we actually have the county eligibility workers on site to do the interview immediately. This has been really, really important because often students' applications can get lost post-submission. And often students, when they're in class or working, they may miss the call of an eligibility worker for the interview for CalFresh. So this has been one of the important things that we've seen in terms of the partnership, that we're really thinking about how could we scale this to actually serve more students and have more large events. This has been definitely impacted by the pandemic, and so we've moved to virtual group application events. And one of the things that I think has been really helpful is that while you may have paid student staff or partners from the food bank or the county who can work to support students, that often what's the most effective support is having individual students do one-on-one application assistance. So again, our team of student ambassadors really help provide that support as well. Next slide. I think, you know, for us, one of the things too I wanted to share today is some of the other creative partnerships kind of beyond social services in particular, but to think about how we also think about addressing food security for students who are not eligible for CalFresh. So for one, we have a food assistance program so that if students are either denied CalFresh benefits or are waiting benefits but need something beyond what the food pantry could provide, we have a one-time food assistance program. We also know that there are a lot of student communities who are actually not eligible for CalFresh, such as our undocumented community, our international students, and some of our grad student communities. So we've created a CalFresh award, which we kind of consider a CalFresh equivalent, where students receive a food award for 10 months. So similar to what a students would receive if they had CalFresh benefits. Obviously, this is quite costly, but for us, we have targeted communities who we connect to those particular programs. And then one thing that has been exciting too is that we work with our campus law school to support students when they are denied CalFresh benefits. So that's an important part of the model, is that not only, again, are we trying to ensure that students are applying to CalFresh, but if they're wrongfully denied, this program really supports students to navigate that process. All right, next slide. I think that might be it, Ruben. Beautiful. Pass it on to you, Ruben.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate you. So now that you all have seen a little bit of our strategy and the ways that we are being intentional about bringing together campus and off-campus resources for our students, what we wanted to take you now is, how does something that's happening at the campus level, what's its relationship in terms of state entities and the way that you design an interdependent strategy that is power with rather than power over or power under. Full transparency, y'all, my background is in ethnic studies. I'm also a longtime Bay Area organizer. I'm trained in like third world feminist theory. So a lot of what I bring to the space and to the conversation comes from that organizing background. So what my goal is to give you all not just what we did from kind of like a report back, but what it took to make things happen. So I just want to put that there for you all to hopefully we're gonna play with each other as we move in that direction. So first and foremost, I think it's important to set up the context. In the state of California, we have 3 public higher education systems: community college, which is 116 campuses. We have 23 state universities, and we have 10 UC research universities. That's the landscape of the public ecosystem. Within that, historically, there's been these dynamics of the hierarchy of human and institutional value. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about here. We tend to devalue the community college experience and the community. Then somewhere in the middle is the state experience, and then you have the UC. Now, this is the historical context. Full transparency on my end, I grew up in a community where the overwhelming majority of our community members either don't go to college, or if they go to college, they go to community college. So I've always celebrated the value of the community college because it is by far the largest college education that our community receives. And then some of us go to the state level and very few of us go to the UC. So I didn't come into the higher education community with this kind of dynamic. I came from a much more celebratory and understanding that all of the segments had their role to play and were essential to be brought together, because you can start in community college, go to state school to finish your 4-year degree, and then go to the UC to finish your graduate school degree. All of that is sustained in connection with each other. And a lot of the people that graduate from the different segments end up working in the other. So the connection is that. The nuances of this kind of like value system, if you will, is that despite the UC being more valued outwardly, there's this notion that the UC system is very elitist and it's very inaccessible. And in so many ways, historically, it is absolutely true. But if we continue that narrative today, it completely invisibilizes the historical efforts to make the UC system much more accessible, much more equitable. And now seeing that the majority of our UC students are actually historically minoritized students, right? We're talking about Black, Native, Latinx, Southeast Asian, so on and so forth, right? If we don't say that, then we continue to lie in this narrative that the majority of the UC is white-bodied, wealthy, legacy students and privilege. That is an erasure of the reality of the community. Y'all with me so far? You know what I'm talking about? Story matters, narrative matters, and we keep lying about who are the students, then it sets the expectations of resources and support. The other layer to that is that the majority of our state leadership actually did not attend UC campuses. So they don't have an allegiance to the UC system. So when it comes to legislative and budget efforts, the tensions are there that for them, the UC system was not accessible and it wasn't helpful in their trajectories. So they hardly ever prioritize the UC system for legislative and budget efforts, which impact social services, resource allocations, et cetera, et cetera. And then funding formulas are very different for each one of the segments, as you can imagine, right? One segment is 116, another one's 23, and the last one is 10. So funding landscapes are completely different. And then the legacy of the dynamics between them, previous leadership showed up in very competitive dynamics, as in like $1 to community college is a dollar that didn't go to CSU or UC, or vice versa. That was really present in the landscape. Then our generation comes in and you already know we were ready to party and to bring people together and to change the culture. So the first thing that we did was to really bring an energy of interdependency. We're not here to compete or fight each other when it comes to students' basic needs. We are centered in all students at all times are worthy and deserve to have their basic needs met. Because the better that we take care of our college students, the better they will go and take care of the communities that they will become a part of. We want to make sure that that is the value center to the work that's going on. And that has allowed us to call in and to organize a massive movement of folks that historically had nothing to do with higher education, could not care less about what's going on in the college setting because they only understood themselves separate from higher education or in active competition because of those legislative and budget efforts. So what we were able to accomplish was the first bill that essentially brought folks together was AB 1930. You see the bill here in front of you all, and it was our attempt to say, man, California is second to last in terms of SNAP and CalFresh enrollment, even though we have the largest population that is potentially eligible. That cannot continue, and we need to figure out how do we get our students enrolled into SNAP and CalFresh. As you all know, many of our students grow up getting free breakfast and lunch. Then you go to college and that kind of goes away. You don't get that kind of support that was instrumental for you to be able to make it through your K through 12 and then get into community college, state, or a UC campus. So what I wanted to lift for you, a highlight here, hint, hint, you know, copy, paste, let's make this happen in other states type of thing, was to say, we're struggling to work with the right people here, and we're not getting into the right rooms. We're not getting access to the right conversations. So let's create a room. What we asked is for each of the segments to have a work group formalized and institutionalized with our California Department of Social Services. The only way to make sustainable change happen is through relationships, trust, and connection. So we wanted to create this mandated work group that was going to bring all of the leadership of the segments that represent over 2 million college students in California to do the work together. And from that point on, y'all, the magic started to happen. Folks are starting connecting. We started building trust. We started ideating. What you see here on my left, or if you're looking at the screen, it should be your left too. We brought together the student associations of the 3 segments. What you're seeing here is the leadership of community college, government, State University, and UC University, all coming together to say, what do we know about the struggle of food insecurity, housing insecurity, and basic needs? Are students willing to organize and turn this into a priority for your work at the state level? And then we were also able to bring together, to the right of your screen, you'll see the anti-hunger coalition leadership and the anti-poverty coalitions that we were able, through those trust and relationships and people connecting us with folks, to call them in and to say, look, if you believe in the eradication of hunger, college students are hungry. That's why we wanted to start today with the data that Kyoko presented, because they didn't know. No one had outreach to them. They had no idea that this was going on. And the Anti-Poverty Coalition doesn't just bring in hunger, but also houselessness, Medicare, Medi-Cal, senior services, child services, brought all together, knowing that the eradication of poverty creates that kind of abundance and sustenance for the entire network. So we were able to build up to that direction and bring folks together across coalitions that had never worked with higher ed, which then allowed us to create something that we call CHEBNA, which is the California Higher Ed Basic Needs Alliance. Kyoko is culturally Mexican, so she always refers to it as Chebnita, which I think is really precious and hilarious. So CHEBNA here allowed us to bring together the leadership of CCC, CSU, and UC specifically to do higher ed work. I don't want to romanticize this for you all. On the left, you see years in the making of us bringing folks together. You can see how much time has changed because my hair got progressively longer throughout these photos to show you all that the timeline is real. And we have to move at the pace of trust and wellness to make some things happen. So what you're seeing here is us intentionally bringing folks together that ultimately resulted. We got so lucky, y'all. February, the month before the pandemic shut us down, we hosted the CHEBNA Summit, the first time in California history that all 3 segments were brought together, government entities were brought together, foundations dedicated to this work, and we hosted over 700 community members in this first ever summit. You see on the upper right-hand corner, we have the executive director of the California Student Aid Commission. We have the senior advisor to the governor. We have the highest ranking student, the student region for the UC system. And we have the chief of the Department of Social Services. And we have the chair of the Anti-Poverty and Anti-Hunger Coalition that is now actually the chief of staff of our state senator, Skinner. All opening up a powerful full keynote panel of some of the most brilliant and phenomenal women in leadership that happen to be leading the key offices and departments that shape this entire ecosystem of basic needs. So I wanted to make sure to show you all that it's not just a matter of romanticizing that work, it translates into some real numbers. Through that journey, now we were able to effectively pass law and budget law specifically that is now providing ongoing resources to basic needs. So right now, we're still getting some of the final numbers. So that's why there's some placeholders here. I'm going to update this and we're going to make this available to you all. But there are now over $60 million for the community college, $30 million for the CSU, and over $30 million as well for the UC system, specifically to do this basic needs work that now allows basic needs centers to exist in all universities, public universities in the state. and serves as a baseline to ensure that present and future generations are going to have dedicated basic needs services the way that Kyoko mapped out for you all. And lastly, where does this land? It lands in us saying the work that we've been doing in California is in right relationship with national efforts that have been going on. The latest resulting over the last 2 years, drafting the Federal EATS Act that is working towards removing all of the complications that are keeping college students across the country from having an accessible and effective experience through SNAP. And we are also part of the Ending Hunger in America campaign that we have our representative and chair of the House Rules Committee, James McGovern, leading. And as of this week, we just celebrated that the National White House Conference to End Hunger in America actually received funding and will be taking place as long as nothing happens on the Senate side and we sign that into law. So we're really excited that these efforts around basic needs in California and across the country are going to come together so that the Ending Hunger in America conference hosted by the White House is going to make sure that the next phase of anti-poverty and anti-hunger and safety net programs that are moving us towards abundance are going to include college students. Because the last time that this conference happened, college students were not involved in that discussion. And that's why we've had significant federal to state challenges across policy and budgets. So we wanted to give you all this landscape so that you all had an opportunity to really understand the strategies and how we've designed from the campus level all the way to creating a state effort that has national implications and that hopefully is helpful for you all in the efforts that you got going on. I hope there's some time for some questions. I know that there's been some action in the chat, but we're here to be of service to you all. Trust us as part of your village. And thank you all so much for joining us today and for sharing quality time with us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ruben and Kyoko. The information you shared is invaluable, and it's just so good to hear that you all are doing that. I did want to highlight some of the questions that are in the chat. I know you've responded, but so you can expand on those. So one of the first questions was about the text messaging platform that you're using or ones that you're exploring. If you want to answer that.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been excited about, I think about, you know, historically, we've worked with our food bank partners to be able to send out the text messages, but really the hope, we've identified Signal Vine as one of the better platforms that we would like to be able to use. It's an AI kind of base. It's so funny. I'm a social worker, not a tech person. I was like, it's AI, but it really helps, I think, minimize, stop it, Ruben, the, you know, actual staff time and labor in terms of answering a lot of student questions. And one of the things that we found is that, you know, when we have individual support for students, they sign up not to apply for CalFresh, but usually to troubleshoot or problem solve. But I think Signalvine is great because it's meant to be almost like a chatbot of sorts. So we're hoping to be able to launch that soon.
Thank you. Another question that came in was what would we need to do to get our local social services involved with programs like this? I could see this being a partnership that could really help our students greatly.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I know I answered a little bit, but you know, one of the things that I am reflecting on, you know, when thinking about some of the challenges that our local counties have in terms of CalFresh or SNAP enrollment, is that you really have to think about, you know, the challenge that we've heard, especially our partners at the food bank who have these large outreach contracts, is that finding, you know, individuals or communities to apply is something that they're always trying to figure out. So that's a huge need. We have our students, right? It's a direct pipeline. So to me, it's a win-win. Any folks that have a CalFresh or SNAP outreach contract, it's great because what we've seen is that over the years for our food bank partnership, we actually have become the largest group or community who submit CalFresh applications, right? So I think really mapping out those mutual goals. And I think for our county social services, it's been really great because they have an expectation that they're going to increase enrollment. So it's really being able to say, we're all trying to accomplish the same goal in hand, but how can we figure out more of the relationships, right, to identify who are the right people to move this forward. And ever since we actually identified our social services liaison, who was really a champion, whether or not he was the right person, but the fact is he was really involved and committed. He's really, championed this effort and been involved in thinking about how do we improve the student experience? How do we really improve our data collection? So that's what I would definitely recommend.
Thanks. Daryl, I know you initially asked the question and you had your hand raised. Did you want to share something?
Yeah, I just wanted to also touch on a few things. Hi, everybody. I'm Daryl Parker, and currently here at Hazard Community Technical College / Moorhead State University as well. One of the things that I've noticed that works with reaching our students is social media. We use Signalvine here, and a lot of people don't respond back to text messages either. I contact most of my students via social media. And my other thing was also, I love the idea of partnering up with the student ambassadors here on our campus to help people fill out applications, as well as other organizations like the SGA or Black Student Union that be taking off here soon. What kind of training would we need to incorporate with them so they can have a better understanding of the whole application process to get people to sign up for SNAP benefits? That was another question I had also.
Thanks.
Yeah, you have all of the great questions today, Daryl. I love that. But you're right, social media has been really key because that is the way that we're really engaging our student community. But I think that's where for us, if I think about where we're at now, I really have to give a lot of credit to our local community food bank, who really helped us understand the basic eligibility, the application process. So if you're able to figure out who in your county or local jurisdiction has those SNAP outreach contracts, I think that's really key in terms of really that direct connection, because what ended up happening is that they originally, for us, Alameda County Community Food Bank did the training for our student staff, really understanding eligibility is key, right? We wanted to make sure we're giving students accurate information, but we also had access to the systems that the food bank used to actually submit the applications online. So that was really great. We developed an MOU in terms of outlining the partnership, but that's, I think, a good place to start if that already isn't in place, because having our student ambassadors really spread the word. We see that as a really popular way for students, right? It's word of mouth that always comes back to how folks really understand about our services. So I think it's a really great model.
Thanks, Kyoko. Another question came in the chat. Do you all have any tips for navigating the conversation with students whose parents already have or claim they're on SNAP benefits, but the student doesn't live at home with that parent and they're not the one receiving the benefits?
Yeah, so the guidance we've always received, and again, our food bank partners have been really helpful because they've been doing this work so much longer. But as long as there's not a shared address on file, we haven't seen any concerns there in terms of applications rejected, because unlike other social services, which tend to be a little bit more complicated for eligibility, we've also had really clear direction that it's about the actual sharing of food. So that's a question that comes up around the college student experience, because often many college students who are not living at home have roommates. And so the guidance is, again, that we've been given that, again, as long as students are not living with their families and in terms of their roommates, unless they're sharing every single meal together and prepping every single meal, they're actually applying on their own. So we've, again, really thought about the partnerships in terms of where we run into problems to be able to navigate any pushback, but that's something that we've been really fortunate to not have any concerns around.
Perfect. Let's see if there's any more questions in the chat. I'll take the privilege of being the facilitator to ask you all a question. So for institutions who are just starting and just exploring what this could look like, attending the webinars, what is a good first step, or how do you start the process or start some of these conversations that you all have been doing for so long? Is it engaging the campus community? Is it going out into the community? What would you recommend as a good starting point or catalyst for this work?
Ruben, I'll pass the mic to you because I feel like you have some of the historical context I think will be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. First and foremost, y'all, I just want to share gratitude for you all being here, because the fact that you're here lets me know where your heart, where your mind, and where your values are. Right, there's a lot of places to be right now. World War III is popping off. We still have compound pandemics, and I can imagine what's going on in your somatic experience and in your trusted circles, and you're choosing to be here together. So I want to start with that gratitude, because amidst through that, you're committing to a place of belonging, equity, justice for our communities that are in need. So I think taking care of ourselves is absolutely essential. Please do not let the status of the world and the workloads disconnect you from how important your health and your well-being is. Make sure that you're sleeping, you're eating, you're exercising, you're facilitating your joy as much as possible, because that's what's going to sustain us in balance to everything else that we need to do in our day-to-day. So I just want to call you back into your healthiest and to your centered place of wellness. And that's just us being committed to healing justice. The second thing is, when you're getting started, you want to make sure that you're speaking the multiple languages of your institution. Some people need to hear student stories. So who are the 2 to 3 students that are comfortable for you to share their stories, either anonymous or with them? Because student stories are incredibly powerful. The second thing is, we need to make sure that we are bringing the institutional language, which is data. And at this point in this work, there is so much data that you have access to in ways that when we started, we couldn't find data that was consistent or reliable or spoke to the context that we were in. So I encourage you all to look up data. If there's data available in your area, great. If not, do not let them lie to you that data doesn't count. You can find community college data, state data, or research university data. It's more readily available. If you struggle to find data, do not struggle on your own. I'm happy to put on the chat our basicneeds.berkeley.edu website. And then we also have basicneeds.ucop, that's UC Office of the President.edu. And we have centralized research and materials for you all in both of those websites. Thank you, Melanie, for putting the Berkeley one. And then we have the basicneeds.ucop.edu. Data is there available for you all. There's also going to be national data that we want to invite you to, like the Hope Center has national data for you all to refer. So caring for yourself, having the student stories and student narratives, looking at the data, and then showing up to call people in. These are the key folks that you need to start with. Make sure that you have your student government and you have right relationship with student government. Why student government? Because they have direct access to your leadership, and they're going to be able to make things happen through an advocacy lens that staff and faculty and administrators not so much, right? A student can go into the president's office and say, I'm gonna flip this desk, and they're good to go. A staff goes in there and sneezes when they're not supposed to. It's a very different accountability experience. So student government. The second thing, who is your champion in financial aid? You need to find somebody in financial aid who is a champion of students. And please hear me when I say financial aid champion of students, not financial aid champion of the institution and functions as a police over money that doesn't belong to them and doesn't belong to anyone. You need to find the champion of students within your financial aid office. They exist. They're super brilliant. They're super powerful. And someone from your financial aid team being in your basic needs organizing effort is essential. The third person that I encourage you all to call in is who is a community organization that has been doing anti-poverty, anti-hunger work, to call them into this little team. And then the last thing is, I would encourage you all to call in somebody from social services. It doesn't matter if they're on the housing side or on the SNAP or CalFresh side, but somebody in there, and hopefully somebody that is not just an entry-level staff member, but somebody that manages a team there that is plugged into the leadership of the space. Focus on those relationships, bring those people in, and start the conversation from what do we already know? What are the challenges that exist? And what are the models that we want to reference? This is now a model for you all. What are other universities that you want to call in to say, we want to move in that direction? And with this team and with these folks involved, one conversation at a time, we can move in that direction. Kyoko, anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, just really to emphasize what you said about financial aid. That has been a game changer across the board for all of our efforts. So whoever that champion is, I just really want to echo and emphasize that point, Ruben.
Thank you so much. There's another question in the chat about if your student ambassadors are trained to be empathetic to the recipients of the food pantry or other basic need supports and the persons that they believe that this is important. And then the next comment was, is that something that can be trained, or is that a personality trait, and what does that look like?
So many layers there. I mean, it's fascinating, right? Yeah, I was like, we could have an existential conversation about that. But, you know, one of the things that Ruben lifted earlier that is so important is values. And so our values at the center are justice and belonging. And joy is something that we often try to practice. And so when we think about all of the students who are involved in our efforts, whether it's our paid student, staff, volunteers, or interns, that's really critical, not just to say that we have these values, but how do we ensure that we know we're living by them? And so for us, that's really important in terms of the work, because I don't know that we have any student staff who don't experience joy in the services that they're providing, right? It's something that our students this year for our CalFresh team are doing a Voices of CalFresh, but they want to destigmatize CalFresh services. Our pantry team is always playing music and dancing up at the pantry, right? So it's not meant to be something that is shameful, but often really is just a part of the student experience while they're on campus. So, you know, I think one, it is about grounding and values and thinking about how we train and onboard everyone who is connected to our services. I think I'll leave it at that because I feel like there's so much more, right, in terms of like, is that an actual trait or not? But a really great point, though, I think, in terms of how we think about the work, that it doesn't have to be so heavy, and think about those moments of joy and levity that we can really share with our students.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that's, let's see. Oh, there's just tons of resources being shared in the chat. And again, we're pulling all those resources out and we'll share them with you via the Impact Exchange. But I do want to thank you both, Kyoko and Ruben, for sharing such valuable information. I think all of these webinars end with like ideas and sparking so many ideas about what we can do now and moving forward. So thank you again for your time today. I do want to turn it back over to Lily to introduce another guest speaker that we have today, but virtual round of applause for you all. If I could stand up and applaud, I would. So thank you so much.
Yes, that was incredible, and so much that we can learn in Kentucky from the experience of California. Really excited to hopefully continue this conversation as well. So next, I'm really thankful that Kelly Talby from Thrive KY is able to join us today, because she is really this example, or not she, but like this collaborative, this coalition of social service agencies and resources is trying to help us in Kentucky increase access to these benefits, especially thinking about the student population. So Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then keep the questions coming, everybody. And, you know, Kyoko and Ruben, please feel free to chime in as well. But, you know, really excited to hear more about what is happening in Kentucky and how can we keep this conversation going.
All right. Thank you all. My name is Kelly Talby. I am the Director of Communications and Development for Kentucky Voices for Health, and we are one of the steering committee members for Thrive Kentucky, Thrive KY, that Lily referenced. And I'll start with kind of an overview of what Thrive Kentucky is, what we do, who we can be, and then kind of reference it to a lot of Kyoko and Ruben's comments, which were wonderful. Thrive Kentucky is a group of coalitions, and our steering committee members include Kentucky Voices for Health, the Advocacy Action Network, Feeding Kentucky, the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky, KY Policy, formerly known as the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, the Kentucky Council of Churches, the Kentucky Equal Justice Center, Louisville Urban League, our only non-statewide partner, and Mental Health America of Kentucky. And we also have many peripheral allies in the Thrive Kentucky Coalition, like the Association Against Domestic Violence, for example. Thrive Kentucky, we started doing monthly updates in 2020. We feel very strongly that there should be a welcome mat approach to the use of public assistance in all forms, not just food assistance, but housing assistance, healthcare, transportation, you name it. Any way that we can improve that access, because, in terms of healthcare, which is something Kentucky Voices for Health more independently of Thrive focuses on, you can't have quality health if you don't have a roof over your head or you don't know where your next meal is coming from. And similarly for HHCK, the Homeless and Housing Coalition, they know that if you are homeless, clearly you are petrified about, am I going to eat? What if I need a doctor? How am I going to get there? It all blends, and it's not a siloed safety net. We want to make public assistance in Kentucky safety net stronger. We want to meet people with respect, dignity, without stigma and judgment where they are. And we feel that at the rate during the pandemic that policies were changing, both at a state and federal level, there was a place for us to kind of become this transitory communicator, and it has really kind of stuck. And I don't foresee this. I think it was created out of crisis, blossomed out of crisis, and I think it's going to grow in a positive way, because we realize and see how we are able to offer resources, encourage trainings, just provide the latest information on where we are in SNAP enrollment, Medicaid enrollment, housing opportunities and waivers. We want to integrate the eligibility and application and enrollment process so that no one unknowingly leaves the assistance they need on the table. And so a lot of what Kyoko and Ruben are talking about specifically with food assistance, there's so many similarities and trends across the entire safety net. And I think there's the energy. Daryl, I love your comments and questions, and the fact you're in Eastern Kentucky, which we know is an underserved area of our state, historically underserved. There are so many opportunities, and the energy is there. And we do have colleges and universities kind of independently of each other, but communicating with each other, moving towards a more equitable landscape and making sure that their student bodies' needs are met. But there's certainly room for uniformity. On the financial aid piece, there's obviously a way we can capture more information and data, to Ruben's point, so that we know not everyone is going to throw their hand up and say, I need help. So it's a way to reverse the helping engine and reach those who might not be comfortable advocating for themselves, or not, maybe they just don't know how to start. But every month, Thrive Kentucky provides these updates virtually, and we provide them for free. We seek out sponsorships so that we don't have to charge anyone anything ever. And we go through, let me look at last month's agenda. Right now, we have legislative updates because we want to inform those who join us of the bills that will impact Kentucky's safety net, whether it's economically, healthcare, transportation, again, the myriad of the umbrella, just that impacts Kentuckians' basic needs being able to thrive. We focus on Medicaid, healthcare enrollment in general, SNAP, pandemic EBT, behavioral health services, mental health support, economic updates, and that includes federal relief, because we don't hear about it as much anymore. It was really a popular topic last year, but federal money is still pouring in throughout the whole country and will continue to support a lot of our local communities. We always cover housing and homeless services. And every month we do offer, just because we want people to have it, it varies from 8 slides to 20 of numbers to know, places to know, just for basic resources, so that, for instance, a financial aid person in a student body office who is assisting with a SNAP application, maybe that same student brings up, I don't have a car, but I have a job offer. I don't know what to do. Maybe that person who is helping them doesn't know what to do either, but they have this packet now and it has just basic information on, well, how about you call here? And there's a lot of just resourceful connecting the dots that we can all use to help each other navigate an overly burdened, overly complicated system, because that is unfortunately how we designed it here in America. But I'll start to pause and let me bring up the chat, make sure if there's anything in here. But bottom line, Thrive Kentucky, we want to remove barriers. We want to support, not penalize. You can't punish people out of poverty. We want to support underpaid, underinsured, be they students, workers, those living with disabilities, and be especially sensitive to the regional dynamics of Kentucky. You know, we have certain areas of the state where childcare, the desert is real. And even when you get into more, Louisville, Lexington, Northern Kentucky, maybe the scarcity of grocery access is a problem. Maybe you have plenty, you just can't get there. Each region has its own unique obstacles. But I am encouraged, and I do want to give a shout out to Kentucky's colleges and universities. Moorhead University, I think theirs is called the Eagle. What is it?
It's the emergency Eagle loan, the Eagle assistance.
Eagle Essentials. Eagle Essentials.
Yeah.
And then UK has Big Blue Pantry. Various KCTCS outfits have their own, I know Gateway, all 3 campuses in Northern Kentucky have a food for thought pantry system. Sometimes these are driven by the student government bodies. Sometimes these were driven by the leadership of the university. There is a spark, and everything that Ruben and Kyoko were talking about, I think the energy is here. And it's just kind of, how do we start to capitalize on that and really start to move the mark? And again, the safety net as a whole, if there's a way that we can even broaden that integration beyond food assistance, that will really give every Kentuckian, undergrad, whatever level of study they are in, the opportunity they deserve.
Daryl, did you have a question?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry. I thought my mic was muted. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Kelly, I had a question, and I'm really interested to know, so Thrive is like a coalition of all of these different orgs, and it sounds like you all get together so that you are trying to connect these dots of the various social benefits and resources available, and kind of create more of a holistic safety net experience for Kentuckians. What does that look like if a campus is interested in engaging with social services in a holistic way? Like, short of, we don't yet have a social service center or basic needs centers on all of our campuses, where I'm assuming you can walk in and get, oh, I have a housing question, or I have all of the different issues. So is there is Thrive moving in that direction? Is there a way for campuses, like how do campuses connect with these social benefits for the state?
I think probably kind of a twofold answer here. The trainings we offer do supply continuing education credits to licensed clinical social workers and community health workers. That is something that we enjoy being able to offer those professionals for free each month. So there is benefit in knowing that there are people already in the community doing this work who are receiving these updates in live time. And alternatively, if there's a campus interested in kind of a more holistic approach on how to enhance the safety net, be more ready for questions that they receive from their students, there are, I mean, I could come up with 20 opportunities off the top of my head, but the number one that sticks out to me right now is community health workers. In Eastern Kentucky specifically, we have the third largest concentration of CHWs in the country. And these are individuals, don't let the health deter you. Yes, they are very health insurance and medical oriented, but they know how to navigate the system. And part of their role and what they are doing for Kentuckians already is if you come in and you have a doctor's appointment, but you do need transportation, or you aren't sure where you're going to eat next week, they already kind of have their fingers in those pies and are maneuvering and helping Kentuckians navigate that process. And that's just one example of how we can already capitalize on the people in our communities doing this work as it stands. But whether it was a campus to government relationship or a campus to their own personal hire relationship, there are tremendous personnel opportunities. If colleges wanted to hire, and they could call it whatever they wanted. If they wanted it to be a SNAP administrator at first, just to identify food insecurity issues, and then broaden it to a more safety net driven, holistic view. I think every campus will have similarities. There's probably not a cookie cutter, can't just cut out the little pin doll and place one person at every campus and it worked the same. Each campus has its own unique traits, but there's a lot of personnel opportunities on how colleges can get more integrated. And as far as just getting started and just kind of getting a lay of the landscape, please join us. We would love to have more broader questions, student-driven questions. We are comfortable if a college wants to do their own Thrive Kentucky update, and you want kind of an abbreviated version of what we do each month anyway. Those are the sorts of policy advocacy that we can do. And I will drop, in fact, the next couple of registration links in the chat for anyone who's interested.
Thanks, Kelly. I know this is really, our space as campus partners here. So I really welcome anybody. If you have any other thoughts, ideas, questions, challenges that you're facing on your campus, sometimes we go to breakout rooms, but I think that, just for our remaining time, we can just stay in this one room together. And really welcome folks to share takeaways or, thoughts of how what we've talked about today and learned about today might be able to help you in your work to enhance the safety net for students. We are shy. This is also really helpful for the collaborative to get a sense of, what is most beneficial to our campus partners in this work. I mentioned, trying to think down the road as to what might be some valued technical assistance that we could bring to our state and our campus partners who might be interested in, maybe kind of learning more about this path that California went down. Great, Shauna, thank you so much. Please.
Trying to get all my gadgets turned on. Thanks. I'm not sure how many KCTCS folks are in this meeting, but on our campuses, we have TANF, KTAP funded folks that we call ready to work coordinators, and they work closely on a daily basis with the DCBS local offices. So while their primary purpose and primary target population certainly is KTAP clients, because they work so closely in that space, and KTAP clients, as you may well know, are also eligible for SNAP and child care assistance and pretty much all of the public assistance streams of funding are braided with that KTAP cash subsidy. So those ready to work coordinators work in this space on a day-to-day basis. And while their caseload technically must consist only of KTAP clients, they can certainly be a great touching point, beginning point for really all things public assistance on those campuses. So thank you. And Kelly, I have already shot you an email as I am putting together kind of a public assistance overview internally for KCTCS colleges coming up the 1st of April. And I'm trying to have some point people for the various streams of public assistance. So thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. It sounds like our KTAP coordinators might be underutilized, or at least, if we can bring more students to them, they can do more. They can serve a broader audience.
Yeah, at the very least, they can help those folks make connections with the portals at DCBS, whether it's an electronic portal or connecting them with a person or whatever. It's become a little more challenging in recent years, where DCBS has been exploring different models of service delivery and trying to take a lot of their assistance virtually and by phone. But my sense is that they're starting to move back to a kind of having more opportunities for face-to-face visits in those DCBS offices.
Do y'all mind if I share something quickly that's coming up? I think something that I wanted to share with y'all is just how important it's going to be that as y'all are having these conversations, that there are opportunities for us to call folks in and to say, what are some of the effective practices that are going on right now in our area that others do not have? And how do we help them move in that direction? As much as it is important to map out some of these conversations of, is there money? Where is the money? How do we tap into the money to be able to do the work? And that we need to embrace really emergent strategies that allow us to be present in shaping all areas at all times in common direction. I say that because I've worked with folks who are only interested in getting the money and then they'll do something about it. Other folks who either their ego, their insecurity, or a culture of like competition doesn't allow them from learn from other campuses. And sometimes it's a big campus having to learn from a small campus, or a small campus having to learn from a big campus. Or I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's true. When rival colleges and universities from kind of like a sports kind of lens don't want to work with each other. And I'm like, y'all, that is a hot ass mess. Just because your football teams are rivals don't mean that one area is worthy of hunger and houselessness and the other one is not. But I've seen all shapes and colors to those dynamics. So I just wanted to name that as an intentional way of calling in. And I do want to say, y'all, how important it is that there's pleasure and joy in this work. I understand that it's so incredibly challenging to hold some of our students who have experienced some of the most severe harm or are currently experiencing that harm. But also I want to energize you all that if there is so much harm and loss of hope around their world and their day-to-day experience, coming to you and all you are centered in is to be trauma informed and to center the trauma in your work, then there is no holistic embrace that that person is more than their trauma. And how are we bringing, like, hey, what is your joy? What is your pleasure? What is your ideal experience? And let's name that, and also be mindful of the trauma challenges that are going on, so that is part of the conversation, but that we energize and we leave our students that we're supporting and caring for in a healthier and better place because they came into contact with us. So I just want to name that and celebrate that. I've learned a lot from Kyoko about that. It's fascinating for me to just be in awe and witness Kyoko when students come in some of the most challenging places. And then within 10 to 15 minutes, there's like full on belly painful laughter going on. And I'm like, what just happened? And most of the time it's her with some like cat references that I don't get because I'm not a cat person. Or them talking about something, you know, and to see the energetic shift of our community when they come into contact with us. And the last thing that I wanted to share, and happy to pass the mic back, is I know that I come from a background that our family multiple times, because basic needs is nonlinear, right? We always talk about upward socioeconomic mobility, but we don't talk about how mobility can be upward or downward at any given time. So I know that our family had to tap in for support and for services. And I can't tell you all how many times I went to a place where they gave me food or resources, but the people treated me in such a way where I'm like, I don't even want this food, right? Like, I don't even want this resource that I know that I need because of the way that I was treated. Sometimes folks weren't even looking at me or weren't even talking. Like, it was the most awkward, uncomfortable experience as I was being supported, or our family was being supported. And then there was other times where I would show up and things had ran out, or they didn't have things that were available to us, but the people treated me with so much kindness and affirmation and gratitude and shared words of encouragement that even though I didn't get the food that I needed, my mind, my heart, my spirit, my somatic experience left better and more energized than when I got there. So just wanted to lift some of those items because I don't think we've gone to those in that direct way, but I just wanted to lift those kinds of areas and angles to you all on top of the gratitude for you all and taking care of yourselves. But Kyoko, I don't know if something's coming up for you, like in that arena, because, you know, you're really the black belt in that world.
No, I mean, I appreciate you calling me out and embarrassing me, but I really think that what you're speaking to is right, though, in terms of where this work can happen, right? Because there's so much, I think about the champions and the efforts that are already happening on a campus that maybe doesn't have a centralized basic needs center. I think that is really, to me, Ruben, I think you always say brilliant things, but like really the heart of the work is figuring out ways to be more coordinated with folks who are already champions, even without some of those resources, because it is thinking about the student experience as a whole. And I know for a campus as large as ours, having to navigate multiple paid staff or providers, application processes, different departments can be really exhausting. And we know that you know, time fatigue is real. And so I think that's something to me too. And it's always a little bit of a chicken or the egg, but I think that is an important piece that's really sticking with me.
I'll just tail end on everything Ruben and Kyoko just said, that also don't become discouraged. Among the political arithmetic and the personality conflicts with different schools and everything, it's also easy, and we see it happen, where something logistical or tangible looking happens, and then certain members of the community say, well, there, we fixed it, and they want to stop, and there's like kind of a loss of energy. And so don't lose sight of the big picture. And I can't underscore enough how it's a yes and, it's a yes, we need these tangibles on campus, integrated more seamlessly, available for every student. But big picture, we need that holistic approach to embody and encapsulate and wrap around every single person. And just, I'll give you a stat right now that kind of paints that picture on like why we need both the food banks, but the value of SNAP. In Kentucky, for every one meal that a food bank provides, SNAP is providing 9. So there's value and a need for both. It's going to be easy to get discouraged or lose focus or the drive, but it's still there. This has been a problem for decades. We won't solve it overnight, but the work everyone is doing is so incredibly important.
Thank you all so much. If you don't mind, I just wanted to do one last slide here and then just wrap us up. Is that okay? Melanie, is that good?
Yes, that sounds
Slideshow.
great.
Oh, let's see. Okay, there we go. Okay. So I'm really appreciative of everybody and the conversation that we were able to have today. We do have, this has been a 5 webinar series with Complete College America, and they have brought incredible people with amazing experience to each one. Our last one is in 2 weeks on March 29th, really focusing on measuring the effectiveness, impact, and ROI of our student basic needs supports. Speaking to how do you communicate with your campus stakeholders through your student stories, but also through your data. And we were at a campus the other day, and I was just amazed. They had this number that for every $1 they invested in a student, it was a 5-to-1 return, because those students were able to persist and were able to continue working toward their degree. And that is just, hopefully that speaks to people as far as where do we need to really help support our students in as many ways as possible. We are also continuing a deeper dive around student basic needs with campus teams. We have 5 campuses that have a team that is working on this exact thing, Kyoko, of the heart and coordinating their student basic needs work. And so I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to kind of work with those campuses in a deeper way and to talk through the specific focus areas that you've identified, and then this kind of 30, 60, 90 continuous improvement cycle to move some pieces into place and move a little bit further down the road. One component of student basic needs is student mental health, and we are excited to invite campus mental health practitioners to a community of practice toward mid-April on the 19th to share what's happening on their campuses, and also to discuss and brainstorm what we might be able to do together if there's any resources or additional supports that the collaborative could potentially provide. We will be sending out a follow-up email from today's session. It'll have the recording, it'll have the slides, it'll have all the links to the amazing resources that were shared through the Impact Exchange. So when you get this email from me, you'll be able to click in and see all of the resources through the Impact Exchange, which is just a way that it won't get lost in your email, and we'll always have access to it forevermore. And then also, please, we hope that you can join us for the Student Success Summit that is coming up April 11th and 12th. It is going to have some really wonderful topics. We have a focus on innovation through collaboration with our keynote speakers, as well as some 4 of the hot topics that we're going to be talking about. One is transfer, creating transfer affirming and receptive cultures. Another on degree mapping for student completion, another on beyond financial aid and that holistic student support, as well as kind of helping students build financial stability. And the final is equitable access to work-based learning. And I also want to shout out Daryl again, because he is going to be on our panel, our student panel on Tuesday morning on the topic of centering equity in student success. And we are going to have some incredible students that are going to share their experiences and give us all the advice that we could ever need on how to really support our students where they need to be supported. So thank you, Daryl, and thank you to our other incredible students that will be joining us as well. All right, well, I think that that's all that I have for today. I hope that I get to see you all again in 2 weeks. And always feel free to reach out to us at the Collaborative. Myself, Beth Pennington, Phyllis Clark, we are here to connect and support. That is all that we want to do. So we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Ruben. Thank you, Kyoko.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, Daryl.